What? Neat. I gotta turn on my custom gizmo here. And I've got a thing here I'm gonna push and it explodes all cell phones that are on. So you've got, all right. That was a subtle request to turn them on. I'm easily distracted. Wow. Thanks for coming. I know the world's greatest bassman is playing downtown, and you've chosen to come here. And really somebody told me he was the world's greatest bassman. I forget his name. And yeah, I've been boating for it seems like an awfully long time now, and getting involved in all the things you do to be a boatman, which involves drinking, and but it also involves storytelling. And I just get possessed by these stories, and I want to know more and more and more. And the big characters like Major Powell, I'm really interested in, but not to the point where I want to try and compete with a million other researchers and find out more than anyone else. I'm looking for the people who never really tooted their horn much, but are just fascinating. And this particular story tonight, I didn't write the book. I wish I had. But then I might have had to try and do what Murl Emery did, so it's probably just as well. The way this story came to me was a character named Bob Wood, who was a Life magazine writer in the 1960s, was sent on an expedition to Baja California because Earl Stanley Gardner, who most of you gray-haired people like me remember, wrote Perry Mason and assorted other things, and made a bunch of money. And he loved to go exploring, and he discovered or heard about these cave paintings in Baja California. And so Bob Wood got sent on the expedition, and Murl Emery was one of the guides. And poor old Bob got there late, and so he didn't go in one of the fancy rigs. He had to go in this beat-up old pickup truck with the crazy man. And just fell in love with the guy. And on the way down to Baja and back, Murl told him a lot of his life story, and Bob went, I gotta write a book about this guy. And so he spent the next few years in the early 1960s writing a book about Murl Emery. And it was kind of spicy. And his tales of the building of Hoover Dam, Boulder Dam, were not all that acceptable to people who wanted to think it was a beautiful, glorious thing and everyone was treated nicely. And so they asked him to take all that out of the book, and he said, to hell with you. And stuffed it in his drawer and forgot about it. And 40 years later, opened the drawer and went, what's this? Wonder if anybody wants to publish it. Finally got hold of me, and I went, Murl Emery? No. Well, let me read it. And I was blown away with the book. And I said, yeah, let's go. So Murl is another one of these fabulous Colorado River boatmen who no one's ever heard of. And turns out he was a very seminal character in Grand Canyon from the back caves on down. And that's pretty much, the back caves are almost at the end of Grand Canyon. But he grew up on the lower Colorado River and between Needles and Grand Canyon in that area. Most of it is under Lake Mojave now and under Lake Mead. But he knew that area like nobody else and was the man on that part of Colorado. So this is the character that Bob Wood met and interviewed. And this is at home in Nelson, Nevada. How many of you have ever been to Nelson? How many have ever heard of Nelson? A couple. Well, it's downstream of Hoover Dam, about 15 or 20 miles, and you come in this horrendous dirt road from the north, and it's at the head of El Dorado Canyon. It's where the old El Dorado gold mines were in the 1800s, which played out, and nobody ended up there but crazy people like Murl. And he's here welcoming people to town. Whenever anybody new came and wanted to move in, he'd get up at dawn and have target practice outside their window for a couple hours, just to let them know what it's like. He had the only water tank in town, and didn't like people stealing his water. So unfit for humans. That's still there. I was in Nelson a couple of months ago. He had the only telephone in town. He put it up himself. Never let anybody else use it. He never used it, but he had it. That's the truck he drove to Baja with Bob Wood. The thing Murl Emery did not like to talk about was where he actually was most successful in later life as a miner and a prospector. You know, he's always looking for gold and this and that, but one thing he found was a white rock mine. Now, white rock, you grind it up into gravel and you put it on the roofs of houses in Las Vegas. It's embarrassed him terribly that he owned a white rock mine. But he did pretty well with it. And one of the other things he did in late life was collect old mining equipment. And this is a stamp mill. That thing is huge. And it's actually one his father used in the early part of last century. And he found this thing up in a canyon, dragged it down, got this old one-lung motor, poop, pop, pop thing. And he put the thing together there in Nelson, and he loved to fire it up with great drama and falling down and shouting and screaming and get this thing going. And it would shake the entire town. And he'd let it go for hours. Laugh. Oh my God. I thought this was great fun. Just a cantankerous old guy. Well, where Bob met him, as I say, is on the way to Baja, and this is meeting the locals down in one of the boojum tree forests as they went down to the cave paintings. And a bunch of boatmen are down there right at this minute on a cave painting tour. They took a whole pile of these books down to show the locals. Well, this Bob, many years ago, Bob lives in Sedona now, and he doesn't like to get up and tell people stories. So I'm Bob tonight. So here we go. This is the story of Murl Emery. Here's the area we're talking about. The Bat Caves is where the Skywalk is now. That was a Murl Emery project. Emery Falls down on Lake Mead is named for him. And he traveled all this river up and down and up and down. Here's Hemingway Wash that we'll talk about a little bit, which was the access when they started working on Hoover Dam. Here's beautiful Nelson. El Dorado mines were in here, and El Dorado Canyon goes down to Upper Lake Mojave now. Willow Beach. Poverty Flat is where we're going to start this story, and it's under Lake Mojave now. And it's where Murl's dad set up a homestead. Cottonwood Landing, big old steamboat terminus was here. Chloride, Murl used to live there too. And on down into the Bullhead City and Needles area. Well, this is Poverty Flat. Murl, he was embarrassed to say he was born actually in California, which meant he was a prune picker, but he didn't like to admit it. Mostly he grew up in Nevada or in Arizona. And his dad worked on the old steamboats, and then every time he'd get fairly comfortable, that'd make him uncomfortable, and he'd leave that job, go find something else. Once they got things going in Chloride, that's when he decided to homestead Poverty Flat, and came down there with Murl and his wife, or his dad and his wife, and Murl and his brothers. This is Pop Emery, and I can't pronounce his real name. No one ever could, so they just called him Pop. Yeah, very itinerant guy, and those genes came through strongly with Murl. And I'm going to read several of the quotes that Bob uses. Over half of this book is in Murl's voice, and the people, including Murl's daughter, who I tracked down, said, yeah, that's pretty much verbatim the way Dad talked. So it's not made up. He says, Dad missed a lot of fun, at least from my standpoint. He was just too easygoing. He wouldn't spit in the tiger's face. You miss a lot of experience and a hell of a lot of good times and a few black eyes if you don't spit in the tiger's face.